Hey everybody, hope and pray that you're doing well. Today as we come to our word from the Word, and today that word is reply. Reply. Now we've been talking about responses and recognizing God in His place, praying that He would repay others, and then yesterday and then today dealing with chapter 3 of 1 Samuel and Samuel's calling from the Lord. Yesterday was his initial reaction to think that it must be Eli calling. But today we're going to see a proper reply. So if you go on down in chapter 3, go down to verse 10, this will be the fourth time that God has called out to him. Aren't you glad we serve a patient God? In verse 10, it says, "Now the Lord came and stood and called as at other times, Samuel, Samuel. And Samuel answered, Speak, for your servant hears." Just that simplicity of so many things in that verse. The Lord knew his heart. This is the first time he called Samuel. Samuel's young. He was patient. We've been talking about being childlike, right? I mean, and God knows our hearts. He knows our weaknesses. And so he knew that before this, Samuel was a little confused. But now that Samuel knows it's the Lord, he stands to speak. He just stood. He was waiting. It was if God was telling him, look, don't worry. I'm not going anywhere until you start listening. I'm going to give you the message one way or another. And I'm so glad that when God calls us, he will, we think we can be stubborn. And God's like, I can be a little bit more stubborn. I even look back in the calling on my life, and I've struggled, I struggled early on for many years with even accepting the call to be a pastor. Accepting the call to preach first. And, it was something I struggled with for a long time. And I'm glad that the Lord just kept on standing and speaking. And I don't know what God may be calling you to do and what call he may have on your life, but he has a call for all of us. Don't just think it's just something special that certain Christians get. It's not like that. God has called us all to do something, and it's not going to be just a single call. There's multiple times in our lives. I mean, how many times do you see in Scripture where God speaks to them and he tells them what to do for this season of their life, and then he speaks to them again and tells them to do something differently? I mean, we see that throughout Scripture, Old and New Testament. And we see that even in Paul's missionary journeys, right? Where they were going, who they were going to see, who they were able to see, who they weren't, and even though what they desired and what God desired for them. But see, throughout Scripture, our reply is to be, your servant is listening. So it's even the advice that Eli gives him, right? I mean, we could talk good and bad about the advice that Eli could give and why it's appropriate sometimes to be listening to the advice of godly counsel. But it was as his advice. He says, look, hey, I believe it's the Lord speaking to you. Maybe you need to go back and just listen. And when he speaks again, you just say, okay, Lord, if that's you, I'm here listening. I am listening now. I think the problem is like we even talked about Sunday, and there in Hebrews chapter 5, that the people were unwilling to listen. They have become dull in hearing. And I think many times today it seems as though the Lord has stood to speak for a very long time. And we've quit listening. It's as if we don't even hear him calling anymore. That's a scary thought, to think that I don't hear the voice of the Lord. Now, there's times and seasons where he seems to be silent, but to think that it had been a long period of time since hearing from the Lord, that's a scary thought. It means we need to be seeking him more. Seek him first. Then all these things will be added unto you. Just know that God is calling. The question is, what's your reply going to be? Is your reply going to be more like the reaction we talked about yesterday, to go and seek the advice of friends? Or will your first reply be, Lord, if that's you speaking, I'm listening. Just simply that. I'm listening. I've opened the ear. I've opened my physical ears. I've opened my spiritual ears, my mind, to accept what you would have me to do. I don't know what that may look like for you today, but I'm telling you, if you will just pour out your heart before God, and then also just open up your heart before God and say, God, I am listening. Lord, speak. It could be our simple prayer every quiet time we have, every Bible study we have, every sermon that we preach, to say, God, speak. We're listening. I guess the biggest question for us today is, are we listening? Are we willing to hear what God would call us to do? God bless you, and I pray you have a great, great day.